But me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to this LouieTeeNetwork exclusive limited series, The Reign of Terror, chronicling the 23 years of pure hell that Daniel Snyder has put this fan base through. We have now reached the series finale, the 24th and final chapter, the 2022 season, the final full year of Daniel Snyder owning this football team. So, at the time, of course, we didn't know that this reign of terror was coming to a beautiful end. However, we did know he was on the ropes, right? Snyder was on the ropes. But in typical Snyder fashion, I thought it would be rope-a-dope. He'd take some punches, sit on the ropes, get a little bit of energy back, and then come out swinging again. But while all of the off-the-field distractions continued to mount, the investigations, all of the things that were mounting on top of Daniel Snyder and really making this ownership very, almost to the point where it wasn't worth it for a guy who had already dealt with cancer himself. His wife had already had a bout with cancer. You don't need that kind of stress. He's already had enough of it. Not going to be able to afford a stadium on your own. You had to borrow money from the NFL to buy out the minority partners so that you could fully own the team. It was just a lot mounting against Daniel Snyder. It got to the point where he needed to sell. But, you know, as fans, all we wanted was him gone. And we didn't really care how it happened. We just wanted him gone. Nobody wanted to see the man dead or anything like that. But outside of that, anything else was on the table. You know, nobody wanted to see bodily harm come to him necessarily. I can't speak for all fans, but I would hope that they wouldn't want to see bodily harm come to him. But just about anything else, hey, go for it. And so we were heading in that direction, but we were focused in on the season. And what a season 2022 proved to be. I mean, officially, the Washington football team became the Washington Commanders on February 2nd, 2022. This whole campaign of 2-2-22 and the rollout was pretty sloppy, as you would expect, being under the leadership of Daniel Snyder. Everything he had done with this organization up until this point had been sloppily done. The Sean Taylor tribute, telling fans 3 days before you're having a Sean Taylor Appreciation Day, having the family come out and things of that nature, which is just absolutely horrible. And they were doing it to deflect from some of the things that they had going on off the field, which is a typical Dan Snyder move. You know, London Flector not spelling his name right when they were celebrating him and sending him into the Ring of Honor. Just so many things that they had done in poor taste. This rollout was right in line with that. It was sloppily done. They made mistakes all along the way, including an interview that they had done, which showed the logo and the mock-ups in the background. You could see like a shadow of it in the background, sending that to a local news station. Like, so many errors had been made during this process, including them setting up all of the imagery at the local facility and allowing a plane to have access to see the Washington Commanders, logos and things being put up in the building. It was a mess. At the end of the day, it was a long, very tedious process that was exhaustive as a fan to experience, to be honest with you, which is why I don't want to go through it again. But if they do, it is what it is. But finally, we were the Washington Commanders, much to the chagrin of most of the fan base who did not love the name. Obviously, it wasn't Redskins, so that most of the fans weren't going to love it anyway. But we were never going to agree on a new name. No matter what it was, if it wasn't Redskins, we weren't going to agree on it. And the new look was something that some fans weren't a big fan of. There were different colors being introduced into the color scheme, including black. And so there was a lot of pushback, but it was something that you just had to get used to. It is what it is. We knew it was going to change. We just didn't know a name, and we finally figured out a name probably 2 weeks before they finished the rollout, and now we were able to put a look to the name, and it is what it is. On that fateful day on February 2nd, 2022, Doug Williams is sitting at midfield on the Today Show announcing that we're the Washington Commanders. Okay, welcome, Washington Commanders. We're the Washington Commanders. And now the big thing was, are we going to find ourselves a quarterback? Typical, Snyder fashion. Puffed his chest out. Oh, I got a quarterback now, because Washington did something that I don't know if most fans were on board with when it first happened. As time progressed, we convinced ourselves, I can't speak for you, I convinced myself that, because when it first happened, I was like, ugh, that's nasty. When Washington first traded for Carson Wentz, again, Ron Rivera was kind of in the same mode that he was in the year prior when I told you he went on a world tour. He went on a national campaign looking for a veteran quarterback to come and elevate this roster that he thought was starting to get to a point where it could compete. Struck out last year, ended up with Ryan Fitzpatrick. That was a disaster. We got 2 possessions out of Fitzpatrick before his season was done. So Ron felt like he didn't really get a fair shake in the veteran quarterback market last year because he didn't get to reap the benefits of Ryan Fitzpatrick. So he went and dipped his toe in that veteran quarterback pool once again, this time trading for Carson Wentz, who had come off of a semi-successful season. It was semi-successful because 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. The Colts were in a position to make the playoffs, but Wentz nor the Colts as a football team completely finished the season all that well. Now, all of the blame will fall in Carson Wentz's lap for the downfall of the Colts in the 2021 season down the stretch, where they lose to Jacksonville in the season finale, and they lose the week before against the Raiders, 2 very winnable football games. But at the end of the day, the team as a whole did not play well. Wentz himself did not play well. Absolutely, that is 100% factual. But the entire team didn't play well, and that led to those 2 losses to wrap up the season. And the Colts finished 9-8 and just missed the playoffs. That said, I thought Wentz's performance in 2021 was solid enough that he could have been back in Indy, but their owner, Jim Irsay, who is probably, now that Daniel Snyder's gone, probably one of the worst owners in football. And look, he's not bad I just think he just talks too much. And he's like Jerry Jones. He just doesn't know when to shut up. He's super opinionated. And unfortunately, you put your foot in your mouth sometimes, and it causes problems that wouldn't be there if you just keep your mouth shut. But that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is he was in his feelings because Carson Wentz didn't want to get the vaccine. He didn't want to get the COVID shot. And that's part of the reason that he struggled down the stretches. He got COVID. And he didn't miss any games, but he missed a bunch of practice time. He wasn't himself. And you saw it on the field with his performance in the final 2 games. And they blamed the demise of the season pretty much on Carson Wentz and made him the scapegoat. So there was a smear campaign on Carson Wentz going into 2022. Washington, I thought, bid it against themselves. I thought they gave up way too much for Carson Wentz. A second and a conditional third, which could turn into a second. So, to me, you gave up a lot more. It almost turned into 2 2s and ended up being a 2 and a 3, but it could have easily turned into 2 2s for a guy that nobody else really truly wanted. But because Washington was in such a state that no quarterback willingly would come here, unless they had no chance to start anywhere else. And Wentz would have had opportunities had Washington not traded for him. There were opportunities around the league at that time. Pittsburgh is one of them that hadn't drafted a quarterback yet because we were before the draft when all of this took place. There are a number of teams that might have been interested in a Carson Wentz. And so it put Washington in a position where they felt like they needed to get him before somebody else did, or he chose to go somewhere else after he might have been released by Indy. And I thought Indy wasn't probably going to just flat out cut him. So I thought what they should have did is just waited out the process. But they were so desperate that they gave up the picks for him. And I'm not going to lie, I was very lukewarm on the deal. Go watch the Carson Wentz video that I did when it first hit. I wasn't I wasn't enamored with the deal. I wasn't excited about it. I was kind of indifferent. Like, I don't really know how to feel. Like, this is a guy that tormented us for years in Philadelphia, fell on hard times. The Eagles traded him. He goes to Indy. They feel like they've got their guy. He was with Frank Reich, who probably made him the best version of himself in Philadelphia. In Indianapolis, reunited with him, who probably was the one banging the table for Wentz to come to Indy, and it didn't work there either. And so you're thinking, is it Wentz or is it everybody else? And so there were a lot of questions around Wentz, but eventually a lot of the fans came around because they were hoping he could just give us what he gave Indy last year, because our quarterback situation was so bad. It was down bad. It really was. And, you know, you're thinking to yourself, if we could get that same 27/7 line that he gave Indy last year, we're going to the playoffs. Because our quarterbacks, I think the year before, had combined for like maybe 17 touchdown passes on the entire season. Maybe. You know, so you add another 10 to that, we're going to the playoffs. What we didn't know was how mentally fragile Carson Wentz was. And what we also didn't know was any shred of athleticism that he had was gone. Because even last year, there was a little bit of athleticism left when he was in Indy. We got 0% athleticism from Carson Wentz when he got here. He was literally 2 left feet, like he had concrete in his shoes. But we didn't know any of that at the time. We were just hoping we were going to get the same version that Indianapolis got, and we would be fine with that. But that was the big story of the offseason. And you go into the draft because now that you feel like you have a quarterback, you don't need to take a quarterback. So Washington was out of the quarterback market, or so we thought. And they would not have taken one if things didn't fall the way that it ultimately did. But we're now glad that they did do that, because Washington had done all their homework on the quarterback position just in case nothing shook free in the trade or free agent market that, you know, enticed them. They were going to have to draft a quarterback. And they had done all this homework on Sam Howell, and they just expected him to be gone at that point. You know, they were going to spend a second-round pick on Sam Howell. Had things went the way that they envisioned, they were going to spend a second-round pick on Sam Howell. But as fate would have it, they traded for Wentz, and so they wanted to get weapons and really surround him with an opportunity to be successful. One of the biggest issues we had since Rivera had gotten to Washington is we didn't have any receivers. When he got here, all we had was Terry. And essentially going into 2022, we still only had Terry because Curtis Samuel spent all the 21 basically banged up. So we still didn't know what Curtis Samuel could be for us. So it was essentially in the same spot. De'Ami Brown hadn't blossomed yet. AGG was a failed wide receiver draft pick. They hadn't had any success at the receiver position. Cam Sims was probably the next closest thing to a consistent target. And, you know, he still wasn't a guy that they really truly trusted all that much. So for whatever reason, we still can't figure out why he didn't get more opportunities here, but that's nor here nor there. The bottom line was they felt like they needed another weapon, and they went out and got another weapon in the form of Jahan Dotson in the 2022 draft. That was their first round pick. And now, if you recall, Washington traded back, and a lot of us feel like this trade ultimately will be the one that shapes and molds this football team. If Sam Howell turns out to be a franchise quarterback, we will look back at the trade in the first round of the 2022 draft, and we will say that was the trade that helped build Washington into a real contender, because you trade back from the 11th pick in the draft to 16, which allows you to pick up the extra picks in a draft that Washington really felt like, and most evaluators felt like the 2022 draft, the real value in that draft was rounds 2 through 5. Okay, so all of the condensed action and the picks you wanted to make were going to be in rounds 2 through 5, and so Washington made sure that they cleaned up in those rounds. They didn't have, remember, because of the Carson Wentz deal, they did not have a second round pick initially. So they would like to have gotten, or they didn't have a third round pick, I think. I think it was a 3, and it was a 3 and a conditional 3 that could turn into a 2. for Wentz. I think that's what it was. But anyway, they traded back with New Orleans. They picked up a third round pick, which they did not have because of the Carson Wentz trade. And then what they ultimately did was they flipped another one of those picks, because I think they had 2 fourth round picks, if I'm not mistaken. They flipped one of those fourth rounders, picked up an additional fifth, and I think they also they picked up an additional seventh or something to that effect. Whatever the case may be, it's a trade that, again, if these players pan out, specifically Sam Howell, that's the trade we're going to look back on and say, hey, this is the foundation that this was the draft that kind of set the foundation for us to really build upon the building blocks of Terry McLaurin, Chase Young, and we don't even know if he's a part of the foundation or not at this point. Montez Sweat, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and that group. This was the draft that really added on top of that and really gave us a chance to compete at a high level. So this draft looked like this from top to bottom. First round pick, Jahan Dotson. Second round pick for Darian Mathis. Third round pick, Brian Robinson Jr., who was a part of that trade, essentially, getting that third round pick. You also got the safety Butler out of this draft in the fourth round. Fifth round was where you did a lot of damage. You get Sam Howell in the first pick in the fifth round. Then you double back, get tight end Cole Turner. That's another guy that's kind of lumped into this draft and what you netted from that action with New Orleans. And then trading back with Carolina as well to pick up additional picks. Percy Butler is the fourth rounder, as I mentioned. You got the 2 fifth rounders, Sam Howell and Cole Turner. And then you finish up with 2 seventh round picks. Sip, Christian Holmes, and Chris Paul. So that could turn out to be a really big draft for Washington when it's all said and done. And it set the table for excitement because now you've got Terry, you've got Jahan Dotson as a rookie coming out of Penn State, you've got Curtis Samuel finally fully healthy, De'Ami Brown may be able to flourish this year now, and you still got Cam Sims at receiver as well to go along with Dax Milne. Cole Turner coming into the tight end room gets you excited about that group. We did not know Amani Rodgers, who would be an undrafted rookie that would ultimately make this team and show off some elite athleticism, would also be a big part of that tight end room. But you saw all the weapons kind of gathering. What we didn't know was that some of the moves made on the offensive line, remember this year is the first year Brandon Sheriff would be gone. He left in free agency for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so that was the first year without him. They also moved on from Eric Flowers, inexplicably, if you ask me. For whatever reason, they did not bring him back. And so they went out and got a couple of old geezers from Carolina, Trey Turner and Andrew Norwell. And, we just would go along to get along as fans. They know them from Carolina. John Matsko got the best out of these guys early in their careers. So if anybody knows these two players in particular well, it's John Matsko. So we just went along with it because we just assumed that, these guys are going to... And Matsko, at this point, hadn't done anything wrong. Anything he touched turned to gold, essentially. So we were fine, or I can't say I was fine with them bringing those two guys in. Didn't love the move, but I said if he can get the most out of them, we'll be fine. Should have seen the red flags immediately when we get into camp and Trey Turner is immediately hurt. Should have saw the red flags, right? And the depth on the offensive line wasn't necessarily great, but it wasn't terrible. You thought you could withstand an injury or two, but what we couldn't withstand was a ton of injuries, and that's what ultimately happened and crippled this offensive line. When you couple in, Cosme being banged up, obviously Trey Turner, and not just not being healthy, but just not being good. We couldn't afford. You're so happy you're finally getting your center back Chase Roulier after 2 injury-riddled seasons in a row. You're just happy to finally have him back, and then boom, just like that. Or I think he had broken his ankle the year before for the first time, and then boom, you lose him in week 2. And so the offensive line ended up being a much bigger problem than we were led to believe. But again, some of that was just unforeseen circumstances. So let's talk about the 2022 season in totality, because You know what? It ultimately ended up being a really fun roller coaster ride. Ultimately, it didn't go the way that we would like, and that's always been the problem here with Ron Rivera is the ride never ends in a fashion that leaves you like excited, like I want to get back in line. It just leaves you wanting more, but you're like, I'm not sure if I want to get back on that ride. I want to get on something. I just don't know if I want to get back on that ride. It was cool, but maybe we should try something else. That's kind of how you feel leaving the Rivera ride every year. And it's frustrating because, you know, every year there's a run. We don't know how it's going to look. We don't know when it's going to come. We just know we're going to start slow. We're going to get hot in the middle point of the season, and then we're going to fizz out, right? So the Rivera, if we're keeping with the analogy of a roller coaster ride, Rivera's ride is the same every time. You wait in this long ass line, which is all these losses at the beginning of the season, and you're debating on whether you want to get out of the line and just try to get on something else, right? Do we want to get rid of this guy, or do we want to stick it out? This season looks like it's going nowhere fast. You sure you want to stand in this line? Well, and what you say is, hey, I've already invested this much time. I might as well just see where this thing goes, right? So you stay in the line, and eventually you get on the ride, and now the excitement really starts to hit. You're buckling yourself in. The person's coming to check to make sure that you're locked in there really good. And now you're really excited. And here comes, you know, the start of the ride. The anticipation builds and builds, and you take off. And the first part of the ride is great. And you're like, this is awesome. And that's the 4-game win streak that comes, or that's the 6 out of 7 that came in this particular 2022 season. And you get really excited. And then you're thinking, man, this has been epic. It's going to end well. And then the ride just abruptly ends. And you're like, kind of an ending to the ride is that? That's the Rivera roller coaster. And that's what 2022 was. So you start out week 1 and you got Carson Wentz. So you want to start well. And Scott Turner is a big part of the narrative in 2022 because a lot of fans had turned on him. And this was the first time, if you were a Scott Turner stans, as I was initially, then you kept saying he's finally got a quarterback now. That he can, you know, that has an arm. That's all they talked about all offseason. We got a quarterback with an arm that can put the football anywhere it needs to go, all 3 levels. And we actually saw a little bit of that in week 1. That touchdown pass that Carson Wentz threw to Terry McLaurin, you got to have an arm for that one, right? You can't just lob that one up there. That's got to have a little sauce behind it. And so I'm not going to lie to you, man. The first game of the season, the first 2 possessions, we went right down the field and scored. And we were on our way to score again when Curtis Samuel fumbled, which I thought was what really turned that game on its head. We were up 14-3 at that point. They couldn't stop us. They had no answers for us. And Curtis Samuel fumbles and the Jags recover. If we go in and we score another touchdown and we go up 21-3, that game is over. We are going to blow those guys out, and it's not going to be close. I don't think Wentz has the meltdown that he has in the third quarter that ultimately, in third into the fourth, that ultimately leads Jacksonville into the lead. But at the end of the day, he did fumble, did Curtis Samuel. It did, you know, change the tenor of that football game. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure. It might have been 14-0. It was either 14-0 or 14-3. But Jacksonville then scored 15 unanswered points. And, you know, you look up and it's 22-21, you know, or it's 22-14 as a matter of fact. And you're in kind of a danger zone, right? Like Wentz has thrown 2 interceptions on 2 plays consecutively. You know, one on a screen, which is just awful. And you're thinking, oh my God, is he melting down? This guy's, you know, up until that stretch, he was having a phenomenal game. Scott Turner looks like he's in his bag. We're using Curtis Samuel in all these creative ways. He's already scored a touchdown. You know, Jahan Dotson has already gotten into the end zone as well as, you know, in his first game in the NFL. I mean, things are going really well. And all of a sudden, it's not. And somehow we snap out of it. He throws the touchdown pass to Terry down the sideline. That gets everybody back involved and juiced up. And then they throw the touchdown. We get the ball late. The defense comes up big with a couple of stops, get the football back, and big sack by Daron Payne to set the stage, right, to get us the football back. And then we go back down the field. Or it might have been Daron sack might have came on the final possession to set them up in a third and long or whatever, or second and long, and that's when he threw the lob job up, got picked off. But we're in a position to run out most of the clock, kick a walk-off field goal, and win this thing 24-22. But instead, we go for the gusto, and Carson finds Jahan Dotson one-on-one down the sideline. He gives him a shot, and Jahan makes like damn near a one-handed catch. And it's a thing of beauty, man. He kind of just falls back, catches the football, and we take the lead. And the defense, seals it shut with the pick by Defoe. And he had a fantastic game. And we hold on for the season opener. 28-22, something we hadn't done, with Rivera since the first year he got here. So, that felt great to get off the schneid early and get that win. Week 2, you go to Detroit, and we didn't know what Detroit was going to be that year in 2022, but we did watch them on Hard Knocks. We did know this was a different team. They had a different mentality, and they fought Philadelphia, and we didn't know how good the Eagles were going to be at the time. And they fought Philadelphia like hell, but they came up short. But I thought it was a game we could definitely go in there and win. And we came out as flat as you possibly could come out after a really good start. Jamin Davis gets a sack on the first defensive possession. You're feeling good. This is a nice carryover from week 1. And then the bottom just falls out. The offense gets the ball. Wentz gets sacked twice in a row. And it just goes kind of downhill from there. And you know what? There was a third and 6 or 7 early in the game. And this was the theme of this particular game, confusion. And they just turned Amon-Ra St. Brown loose over the middle of the football field. And he goes for like 58 yards or something like that. And from that point on, it's like the floodgates open on offense, on defense, and on special teams. William Jackson III falling down in the end zone on a ball that should not have been caught for a touchdown. He kind of jumps in the air but doesn't get any lift on his jump because he's falling down. And it's a touchdown on a third down that shouldn't have happened. Carson Wentz is sacked for a safety. He was harassed in that first half. And special teams, we're kicking the ball short. They're getting big returns on us. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong in this game on all 3 fronts. And it's 22-0 at halftime. And we're just playing like shit. And I'm in disbelief. It's one of the worst halves of football that I've seen in a while. Like, we've seen Rivera teams get off the slow starts before. But in those games, like the Giants game, you're down 20-0. The Cardinals game in his first year, you're down 20-0. Like, even in those games, the Lions game, you're down 17-0, I believe it was. Even in those games, we were moving the ball and then we would turn it over and we would do something stupid, right? Or we had opportunities and we pissed them away. We had nothing. I don't think we crossed midfield against the Lions in that game until the second half. Like, we had nothing going. It was horrible on all fronts, special teams, defense, and offense. And then in the second half, it's like a switch flipped. Wentz starts coming out. We get aggressive. We're pushing the ball down the field. We're scoring points. And the defense is holding up. We're getting stops. Unfortunately, Wentz throws a pick over the middle. And I thought that, because we had all the momentum. They can't stop us on offense in that second half. We scored on just about every single possession except the one he threw the interception on, and then the last possession to end the game, right? They couldn't stop us in the second half. But Wentz goes over the middle of the field to Logan Thomas, and it's just too high, and he throws it right to the safety. And that costs you a possession. We still got to stop, but we got within a score. We're on this torrid pace, and then the defense just fell apart at the seams. We cut that thing to 22-15, and then the defense went to sleep. And they give up a 58-yard jet sweep to Amon-Ra St. Brown or something to that effect, 60-something yards, whatever. The real backbreaker, though, is the DeAndre Swift, 3rd and 14, we blitz. And we get in there, we tip the ball. DeAndre Swift has to go down, catch it. He gets up, cuts back 3 times. Nobody even touched. If it was flag football, he would have scored. On 3rd and 14 from like the 18-yard line. It's ridiculous. That was the backbreaker there. But what was really a backbreaker was Chase Roullier getting hurt on the second to last play of that game. In a situation where the game's done, you're down 9 points, you can't come back, and Joey Slide missed an extra point. After we scored the touchdown, Slide's extra point would have cut it to an 8-point lead, and it would have given you a chance to kick the ball off, maybe get a stop, get it back, and have a chance. They couldn't stop us, so you get a chance to get the football back. Who knows what happens? Touchdown, 2-point conversion, go into overtime, and you may be able to steal a game that you were down 22-0 in a half. Slide misses an extra point, and that would be a theme of the season. And that's part of the reason why I think there's a kicking competition as we speak, right? So we lose that game by 9, 36-27. So you're 1-1 on this season, and you're still encouraged, even though the Chase Roullier injury, and we didn't really know at the time how big that was going to turn out to be. You're still encouraged. Carson Wentz threw 4 touchdown passes in this game, or 3 rather. He threw 4 in week 1. He's got 7 touchdown passes in 2 weeks. Like, at this point, you're looking around and you're saying, I don't know, man. This shit is crazy, What we didn't know is that the bottom was about to fall out of his season. His confidence was about to hit rock bottom, and the offensive line was about to start causing problems on this offense that would be irreversible for the remainder of the season. So you get to week 3, and it's the big matchup against the Eagles. Wentz is playing the Eagles for the first time since he left, and this is a big game, right? Eagles fans want blood. We want to shut them up, and they come in and immediately harass Carson Wentz. And we were playing musical chairs on the offensive line with the injury to Chase Roullier. Trey Turner and Sam Cosmi are moving around, and Trey Turner really isn't healthy. Andrew Norwell, his lack of athleticism and just the inability to even move was on full display. And our line was just dominated in that game. And this was the first time when we looked at Scott Turner and say, bro, do you not have an answer? Because the week before, when the Lions were teeing off on Wentz, he didn't have any answers in the first half. It wasn't until the second half where things kind of got cleaned up. But it wasn't because he went to the short passing game. We just blocked better. And really what probably happened was Aiden Hutchinson got banged up. And once he got banged up, they didn't really have a way to get to the quarterback. And so we were able to neutralize their pass rush because he wasn't healthy anymore. Or else we would have never settled in the week 2 game. Well, there was no such luck against Philadelphia. They got after us from the opening whistle, and Scott Turner did not adjust until it was probably the late stages of the third, maybe, where we finally went to the quick passing game. But it was 24-0. And unfortunately, the defense actually did their job, and they gave us ample opportunities in the first half. This thing is 3-0 going into the second quarter, and we missed opportunities. We didn't take advantage of things that were there. We could have picked off Jalen Hurts 3 times in that game if guys were paying attention, but Hurts went off in the second quarter. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and we just didn't make enough plays. And it all started with a deep ball that was thrown that I thought should have been challenged because I didn't think it was a catch. And Ron just sat over there and let the Eagles hurry up, get to the line of scrimmage, and run the play. Whether we would have won the challenge or not, I can't say. But you have to challenge. It's too big of a play for you not to challenge. He didn't. And the floodgates open from there. They throw a tight end screen to Dallas Goedert. He makes Cam Curl miss, gets into the end zone. And from that point on, the route was on. And they scored 21 unanswered points in that quarter, did the Eagles, to take a 24-0 commanding lead at half. We might have gotten shut out of that game if not for a Daron Payne safety that made it 24-2. We would later tack on a garbage time touchdown to make it look semi-respectable at 24-8. But if you watch that game, it was horrible. We never stood a chance. And we got dominated. And now you're 1-2. So you don't love that. You hate how the offensive line has looked each of the past 2 weeks. But you're thinking, all right, you know what it is now. You got injuries. They suck. We're not athletic. Stop trying screens. You got to get the ball out of your quarterback's hand quicker, and you probably need to run the football. That's what they did against Dallas in week 4. They ran the football, and it was very effective. And Wentz had his best throw of the season on a corner route to Jahan Dotson, and we're in this game, and we're hanging around, But the problem is that defensively we're doing some good stuff, but every time we make a big play defensively, it's negated with a penalty, and that was the theme of that game. We had like 16 penalties in that game, 14, 15, 16 penalties. I felt like a lot of these were some really bad calls, some really borderline calls where you go, are you guys really trying to make sure we don't win this game? It was a terribly officiated game. I can say that, but I don't know. Like the penalties that negated turnovers, we had 2 interceptions called back. Both of them were penalties. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But there are a couple of penalties where you go, what is that? What kind of a call is that? Bottom line is we made too many mistakes. Pass interferences. You get 2 picks and each are negated by, penalties. You get a pass interference on a poorly thrown football that William Jackson III just had to turn around, and he could have either had a pick or a knockaway. He gives up an easy walk-in touchdown to CeeDee Lamb. I don't know what that was the game where they realized William Jackson III has to go. Like we can't keep doing this with him. So you lose a game to Dallas that without Dak Prescott to Cooper Rush that you had no business losing. Like that needed to be a win. And you were in that game 15-10 in the fourth quarter with every opportunity to steal it. And you didn't want it. You didn't do enough. So Cowboys beat you 25-10. That gets you to a 1-3 start on the season. Not good. Not very good. But there's hope. Here comes Tennessee. After that, it's Chicago. We can turn this around right now. Right? But it starts with beating the Titans, and the Titans are not good. That's not a good offensive football team. Their defense is okay. We can score. We can do what we need to do. We can limit them. Let's go win this game. And did not start well. They went right down the field on the opening possession, a couple of screens, things of that nature, scored a touchdown. You're like, what the F, bro? And Derrick Henry was running the football a little bit in the first half. He almost had 100 yards in the first half. But we turned the faucet off in the second half. And Dyami Brown had 2 big touchdown grabs. And all of a sudden, you're leading the game 14-10 after the second of the 2 Dyami Brown bombs for touchdowns. And we couldn't even keep the lead for 1 possession. I like to call them shutdown possessions, right? In baseball, they call them shutdown innings. When you take the lead or you score runs, you want your defense to come out there and shut down on the other team on the next inning to keep that momentum going. We need a shutdown drive from the defense. You just took the lead 14-10. It's the late stages of the third. We'd love to go into the fourth quarter with the lead. Offense is starting to gain a little bit of momentum. See if you can't get a stop. And Montez Sweat had a chance to sack Ryan Tannehill. He does it. He gets away. He throws up a bomb 70 yards down the field to Nick Westbrook Akine. And that set off a chain of events that allowed the Titans to get into the end zone. Another big play on that drive. There's a 3rd and like 8 or 9. And we let the tight end, Austin Hooper, just kind of sit down at like the 3-yard line for the first time. Like, what are we doing, man? That was too easy. On a day when we were tearing, Ryan Tannehill's ass up. Pause. And hitting him left and right. Now we're starting to stop the run. They got no weapons. Remember, there's no more A.J. Brown. Their rookie receiver did not play in that game. They have nothing on offense. And we let Nick Westbrook-Akine and one of their backup running backs catch about 3 or 4 screens. And yet, they take the lead 17-14, and we have a chance to win the game. All right? So, we go down, and I think the score is probably 21-17. I think we had taken the lead 17-14. And because we needed a touchdown to win the game. We couldn't have kicked a field goal to tie it. So it had to be 21-17. So we taken the lead 17-14 with the De'Ami Brown second touchdown grab. And they scored a touchdown to take the lead. We get the ball late, and Wentz takes us down the field. And it's actually not a bad drive. We're moving it down the field. Terry makes a hell of a play to get out of bounds. Because if he doesn't, Rivera had already burnt the timeout when he didn't need to. He had challenged, if you recall, a catch by Cam Sims that was not a catch. Everybody could see it wasn't a catch. But because a couple of weeks before in the Eagles game, he didn't throw the challenge flag and he caught a lot of flack for that, he threw the challenge flag this time. And he said, oh, it was right in front of us. We saw it. You didn't see shit. Because it was not a catch. We all saw it. And you wasted a timeout. And we could have used that timeout at the end of the game to run the football. And we didn't have it. So Terry bailed him out by catching the ball, breaking the tackle, and getting out of bounds. Because if he didn't do that, I don't know if we even had enough time to get the situation the way we had it. But then Terry draws a PI down at the 2-yard line. And there's about 1 seconds or whatever. But we don't have any timeouts. So you got to throw it. But you're at the 2-yard line. You're like, man, we got to get this in. This is when you pull out the best 2-point conversion plays you got. And Scott Turner clearly didn't have any because he drew up 3 duds in a row. 3 straight plays that were non-winners. Where you go, what the F was that, bro? That's the best you got? And on the third one, unfortunate. First of all, Wentz tried to throw a pick on the first one. The second one, he threw into the dirt. And then the third one, he got picked off. And it was one of those sinking feelings because when Terry first drew the pass interference, you're thinking, we about to win this damn game. Hell yeah. Snap this losing streak. And then when you got to right around second down, going to third down, you're like, are we really about to win this game or not? Because this feels real iffy. And I think that was the game where everybody, if you were still on board with Scott Turner, you turned on him officially in that game. And if you didn't love Carson Wentz, you had probably seen enough after the Titans game. I thought he actually played well up until that pick. That was the sad part about that, is he played well that game. So now you're 1-4. And it's another one of these typical Rivera slow starts. And at this point, you're feeling like the season's done. You look at the rest of the NFC East, everybody's killing it. The Eagles are undefeated. The Giants are undefeated. I think they might have just lost to Dallas. But I think the Eagles at this point are 5-0. The Cowboys are 4-1, and the Giants are 4-1, if I'm not mistaken. And the Cowboys did all of this with Cooper Rush in the lineup, essentially. So I think Dallas's only loss came in the Week 1 game against Tampa Bay to kick off the season. So it was really rough looking at the rest of the division and looking at us. It's over. But we got a Thursday night quick turnaround against the Bears, whatever. The story comes out about Snyder and his whole situation, and it's just another reminder, we got to get this guy the hell out of here, man. We got a big game. Our season's on the line. You lose to Chicago, the season's done. And here's another ESPN article, and this is one of those Seth Wickersham joints, one of these War and Peace novels, when we really about to get into some investigative journalism. Like, we about to get in somebody's ass right now. Pause. So, yeah, that was another black eye. But we forged forward. And that was the night that I think we thought we had a shot. Al Michaels, on national television, no less, said the rest of the league, the rest of the owners really just would like him to sell. And look, we ended up winning that game, but that's the shit we were talking about after the game, right? Did you hear what Al Michaels said on national television? You know, Al Michaels is plugged in to the league. He knows what he's talking about. Did you hear what he said? We were excited about, him saying that on national television. On the field, really boring game. Nobody could get anything going. Wentz looked scared. He did injure his finger in that game, and you knew when it happened. You could see him, doing a lot of this and trying to keep his finger loose and not let it go numb. You knew when it happened in the second quarter, but he fought through it, and he played the entire game. It was not pretty. Neither team. The Bears turned it over, and that's ultimately what gave Washington a chance. They dominated the first quarter of the game, drove it down the field, had a turnover on downs in the red zone and an interception in the red zone. I mean, they were dominating the game early, and that's what saved Washington. And then another late turnover by the Bears on special teams, coupled with another failed red zone trip late in the game with a missed opportunity, wide open tight end that if he had just thrown it up in the air a million miles, it would have been a touchdown, punt style. He was so wide open, and he missed him. And then, he throws a perfect pass to Darnell Mooney for the touchdown, but Mooney bobbles it and gives Benjamin St-Juste a chance to come over and keep him out of the end zone. So we hang on for a very sloppy 12-7 victory, but who gives a shit? It's a win, and we haven't seen one of those in over a month, or going on a month. So the 4-game skid slides and stops and now you're 2-4, and this pseudo bye is gonna help re-energize you. You hope, and you come off of that pseudo bye, and let's get busy, right? So the next game up on the docket, if I'm not mistaken, is Green Bay, and you're like, shit. But they're struggling though. This isn't the Green Bay that we've come to know and love. They're struggling. So we get them at the crib, and this is Heineke starting because remember, Wentz suffered a fractured finger in the win against the Bears, and so he's going to be out for a little while. And Heineke's entered into the lineup, and we know what we're getting. Is it just too little, too late? And is Heineke going to be able to provide us with that Heineke magic? So he comes in, and he is awful in the first half of that Packers game. Awful, all caps. And if not for a penalty on Green Bay on a fumble that was a scoop and score, and about 3 dropped interceptions by the Packers in that first half, which Heineke had already thrown a pick 6 as well. If not for the miscues of the Packers, we were down 14-0 in that game. It would have been 30-0 if they don't drop all those picks. If that fumble, scoop, and score isn't called back due to a penalty, they would have put it on us pretty good because Heineke was disastrous in that first half. And he might have been nervous. That's his hometown team he grew up rooting for. And I don't know how else to describe it, but he was nervous. He had jitters. First time really playing that season. And so maybe it was, and he said he had some after the game, but I'm like, bro, I need you to not do that shit again. Anyway, second half, totally different story. He came out, and for as bad as he was in the first half, he was equally as good in the second half. And he led us to a victory. And the big play at the end of the game on a third down, up 23-21, throws the pass, the no-look pass to Terry on the comeback down on the sidelines. Terry comes back, wins against Jair Alexander, gets the first down, and that pretty much preserved the victory. Made it probably a little bit more interesting because Terry had to go out of bounds, coming back down that stem, stop the clock. But ultimately, that allowed us to run the clock down and win the game 23-21. So you get 2 in a row. So now you're 3-4. You're feeling good. The next opponent up on the docket is a very winnable game on the road at Indy. And you're like, hey, we got to have it, right? They suck. And they're starting second-year quarterback Sam Ehlinger, and he's making his first career NFL start. They finally benched Matt Ryan, who wasn't playing well. And, we're laughing. We're pointing at them because they did all this stuff to blame Carson Wentz, and now they're benching Matt Ryan, and they got one of the worst offenses in football. So, it's a little bit of vindication on our end, but it's not like Wentz is killing it over here in Washington. So, you know, and they suck, we suck. So it's not, you don't really get to point and laugh as much as you want to, but you snicker a little bit, you know. But you go in there and you're like, hey, we got to win this game, man. We started out well. You get a nice little touchdown drive to start the second quarter. Neither team really had anything going in the first quarter. You get the touchdown drive early in the second quarter, and you're thinking, all right, this is going to be the start of us getting busy. Nah, it really wasn't. We didn't score another point until the game seemed like it was somewhat out of reach at 16-7 after a what we thought was a back-breaking Heineke interception in the fourth quarter. And again, similar to the Bears game, if not for a comedy of errors by a bad football team in the Indianapolis Colts, you had a Jonathan Taylor fumble, which was a forced fumble. We actually forced that one out. Then Sam Ehlinger fumbled without anybody touching him, right? Which was huge because both of these were in scoring range. So that happened. And then they had another possession after the Heineke interception where they should have scored a touchdown, where they give the ball on a jet sweep to Michael Pittman Jr., and he inexplicably cuts it back. If he just runs to the pylon, he's going to score. But he cuts it back, he gets stopped, and they have to settle for a field goal, which keeps it at a 9-point game. Anything more than that, we would have lost because we weren't scoring 2 touchdowns that night. We only had a touchdown and a field goal in us. So keeping it at 16 instead of 20-7 was huge because if they score a touchdown up 13-7, the game's over. So Heineke then takes us on 2 big drives, the first of which ended up in a field goal, but there was a big 4th down conversion there that Heineke makes to Curtis Samuel to keep the drive alive and keep the game alive. And then we get a field goal out of that one. We get a defensive stop, and we get the ball back, and then Heineke converts another 4th down, this time another 2 actually, this time 1 with his legs, and then another completion to Curtis Samuel, who was huge in the game. And then he finds Terry, and then that, and I think that's the iconic moment. If we're talking a singular moment, that's the iconic moment from 2022 season. That's the memory that I think most people have of Terry snapping off in his hometown after he makes that catch on Stephon Gilmore, takes his helmet off, this my shit, that's the moment, right? The game is the Eagles game on Monday night in a couple weeks from now, but the moment is Terry, right, in that game. And we don't do that. We don't come back from behind. I think there was some weird, freaky stat. Washington was like 0-78 in, its last whatever tries to win a game when trailing by 2 or more scores in the final 5 minutes of the game. Like, we don't come back in those situations. It was some crazy, like 1-131 or some shit like that. Like, we sucked in those type of situations. So, to come back and win that game in the fashion, and then we almost lost it. We don't need to get into all that. We won the game 17-16. So now that's 3 in a row. You're back to 500. You're feeling great. You got a big date with the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins making his return to FedEx Field for the first time since he left for free agency to the Vikings. And the Vikings are one of the best teams in football. Right now they have the 2nd best record in the NFC behind Philadelphia at the time. They had only lost 1 game on the season, and that was to Philadelphia on a Monday night in week 2. And so they had won like 6 in a row or something like that. They came into that game at like 7-1. And so this is a big game. Really, really big game. And the defense came ready to play. And they roughed Kirk Cousins up in that game. We stopped Dalvin Cook for the most part, and it's crazy. You get the Curtis Samuel screen where Heineke throws a YOLO ball up into triple coverage, and somehow Curtis Samuel, and we know how the official set a down screen, and Curtis catches it, rolls into the end zone because he wasn't touched, and somehow you're up 10-7. Don't ask me how, but you are. And defense makes a great play before the half. Benjamin St. Juste tips the ball in the end zone that is intended for Justin Jefferson, and it's picked off by Danny Johnson. And so It's 10-7. You're nursing a 3-point lead, but you're feeling really good, man. Like, this is a high-powered Vikings offense, and you've neutralized them to next to nothing. And you get a touchdown to begin the fourth quarter to Dax Milne. You're up 17-7 with probably like 12 minutes to go in the game. And I allowed myself, because I'm stupid, I haven't learned my lesson. I'm a glutton for punishment. I allowed myself to think, yo, we could be riding a 5-game heater, or a 4-game heater rather, heading into this Monday night game against Philly with all this momentum, man. And we could be, 5-4 after starting the season 1-4, and we might be able to catch these boys. We a buzzsaw right now. We got confidence, and I allowed my brain to wander for just a split second. And as soon as I did that, the Vikings got on their horse. Kirk takes them down the field. Those a touchdown pass to Dalvin Cook. It's a beautiful ball too. Like, he couldn't have put it anywhere else. Dalvin Cook, I think, might have even caught it with one hand. It was such a great pass. And so it's 17-14. We're nursing this lead, and Heinicke throws a pick. That's his shit, right? That's his move. Throws a pick, and of course they get the football, and they did what they needed to do, which was essentially go down the field, big play from Kirk to Justin Jefferson, and get some right down there on a 3rd and like 9. He hits Justin Jefferson in one-on-one against Benjamin St. Juste for about 41. That set up the game time field goal. We get the football back. We got a shot, but we have to punt. The Vikings get it back, and they move it right down the field, and we get a stop inside the red zone. They're going to kick a field goal. We're going to get the ball back with about 1:40 left, and an opportunity to, at least tie the game, if not win it. I trust Heinicke for all the shit he's done in this fourth quarter to blow this lead. Give him the ball with the game on the line, and I bet you he'll give you a shot. And we never got the chance. John Ridgway picks up a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty with the lined up over the center, or rushing the center, and that was all she wrote. They bled the clock down, and they beat us 20-17. That one hurt. And in a season where you missed the playoffs by a single game, the Titans game and the Vikings game are the two where you look back on, in particular, in the two Giants games as well. But those are the two that I look at and say, you gotta find a way to win those games. So now you're 4-5 instead of 5-4, and I'm not gonna lie to you, that kind of deflated me going into the Eagles game, because I went from ultimate confidence to thinking, hey, we might be able to beat these boys. So nah, man, like, just don't embarrass me tonight. But I remember very distinctly waking up that morning and saying, I feel dangerous today. And I think I asked you guys, do y'all feel dangerous? Because I'm feeling dangerous. And sure enough, we went to Philadelphia on a Monday night. Eagles are undefeated. And they're not just undefeated. They're stomping mud hole in everybody, right? Everybody's getting worked by this Eagles group. And I think they came in overconfident. They had already beat us up pretty good in Washington earlier in the season. And they said, okay, they don't have anything for us. We just go out here and play our game. They can't touch us. And we had a game plan, though. And everybody else was doing it in Philadelphia. But because you were falling down by so many points, you couldn't really execute it. Just run the ball on their ass. They're soft in the middle. Jordan Davis, their first-round pick, had been banged up. Just run the ball on their ass. And that's what we did. And Heinicke was playing the game that we needed him to play. And the defense was not only getting stops, they were getting turnovers, too. And it was a weird game because for as much as we felt like we were dominating, and we were. Remember, it started off rough. The Eagles went right down the field in their opening possession and scored, I believe. Or we might have gotten the ball first. And we turned it over. I want to say Heinicke fumbled or something. Eagles recover it, and they scored a touchdown. And then I think they scored another touchdown. And it was just like that. It was like 14-0. Just like that. But then, we scratched and we clawed. And, we really... Or it might have been 10-0. I think it might have been 10-0, but they jumped us early. And then we we just started running the football, and we started having success, and then the pass started working off of the run, and next thing you know, Joey Sly's kicking like 58-yard field goals before halftime, and you're up 20-14 at the halftime break. So I think it was 14-0, right, before we even got our shit together. But that field goal before the half was huge. It gave us so much confidence. I remember feeling so confident at halftime after Sly banged it home from like 58. De'Ami Brown makes a big catch. You call timeout, and you send Sly out there, and he bangs it. And I remember the confidence that I saw on the sidelines, after he hit that field goal. Like, man, we can beat these bastards. Second half was a little rocky. It was a little shaky. The offense the opening drive was beautiful, but we missed an opportunity to score a touchdown. If we score a touchdown and go up 27-14, it's no doubt in my mind we're winning the game because the way the defense have been playing that night. But settling for a field goal, making it 23-14, left the door open. And, of course, the Eagles were not going to go away. And they didn't. And so they scored a touchdown. And, things got a little dicey. But we were able to create more turnovers. The Dallas Goedert face mask that wasn't called. And he fumbled. And the subsequent fumble led to a field goal that was the field goal that really put us in a position to win the game. Because without it, you're only up 2 and a field goal beats you. Right? So they needed a touchdown. And then you had the fumble after Hurts hit Quez Watkins on the deep ball. You forced that fumble, and it was our night. It really was our night. And then the icing on the cake is Heinicke late in the game. We're not gonna keep the ball. We're gonna have to punt it to the Eagles. We're just trying to burn a little bit of clock, and he baits Brandon Graham into roughing him late in the game to seal the deal. And now we don't have to punt it to Philadelphia. We can just take knees and end this thing. Big win. It was the type of win that if the season ends up in a playoff season, you look back on that game on a Monday night on the road, hostile environment against an undefeated divisional opponent and foe, and you say, that was the night we realized we could be a playoff team. Because after that gut-wrenching loss to Minnesota and you drop back to 4-5, you could have easily hit a skid again. Lose to Philadelphia, and now you're 4-6, and now you're digging yourself out of a hole again. Instead, you win that game, get back to 500 at 5-5, and it just propelled us to another win streak. You go on the road next week against Houston, dominate them. You're up 23-0 at one point in that game. You win 23-10. You then go to the following week, and it's a sloppy game. It's wet. It's the Atlanta Falcons. They run the football down our throats in that game. Heinicke has a bad interception before the half. Joey Sly misses another extra point, which ultimately almost cost us the game because the Falcons drove it down the field late in a 19-13 game. They're first and goal from the 3-yard line. They try to run it in. We stop them. They try to throw it in. We stop them. And then on third down, similar to what happened to us, and he was open for a touchdown, was Cordero Patterson. He was open. If that ball does not get tipped in the air, it is a touchdown. And it gets batted in the air by Daron Payne, and it gets picked off by Kendall Fuller to preserve the 19-13 victory. And I just remember thinking to myself, this is our year in terms of like the luck going our way. The Terry play against Indy, the Terry play against Green Bay. Yeah, the Titans game sucked. Yeah, the Vikings game sucked. But we're getting more of these happening in our favor than the other way, right? Like the Bears game should have never happened, right? That happened. The Bears game shouldn't have happened, and it happened. The Vikings game shouldn't have happened, or the Colts game rather shouldn't have happened, but it happened. And we got some breaks against Philadelphia, and now this happens. Are you kidding me? We're gonna make the playoffs this year. This is our season to like finally have some good shit happen to us. So now that's 2 in a row, right? Or 3 in a row rather. After the loss to the Vikings, that's 6 out of 7. You're sitting here at 7-5. We haven't been 7-5 this late in the season in forever. And you go to the Meadowlands to take on the Giants for the first of 2 matchups in a row against them with a bye separating them. And this is a frustrating game. You're up 10-0 in a game that you should have been up 14-0, and you're dominating. And you force a Daniel Jones fumble on the opening possession. You turn that into points. That should have been a touchdown. We ended up settling for a field goal. You got wide open Logan Thomas, and Heineke overshoots him by 2 yards over his head. And Logan is a hard target to miss. He's a big dude. So you settle for a field goal. The only reason we even get a touchdown is he throws the ball behind Terry by like a yard, but Terry reaches back with one arm and grabs it, if you recall, makes a defender miss on a third down and runs into the end zone, or else it's another field goal. Like, Heineke was not good. But it's 10-0. But then the defense just falls the hell apart after taking the lead 10-0. And Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley start to really get into a groove. And next thing you know, the Giants have taken, a 14-10 lead, I believe. Might have even been 17-10, as a matter of fact, because no, I think it was 14 or 13. It might have been 13. They went conservative at the end of the half, where they could probably scored another touchdown, to be honest. But whatever the case may be, I think it was 13-10. And then to start the second half, you had Heineke fumble the ball and getting hit. Giants recover, and they turned that into a touchdown. Gave them great field position. And you're asking to lose this game at this point. I think at that point it's 20-10. But we hung in, we chipped away, and we should have beaten them in that game. But it's 20-13 late. Heineke does that Heineke thing that I told you. Give it to him late in the game, give him a shot, and he's going to deliver for you. And you're down 20-13. It's 4th and like 4, and he scrambles around and finds open. I want to say it might have been like a tight end or Jahan Dotson. He found, or it might have been, you know what? It was Curtis. Curtis always gets open on these 4th downs, and it was a big scramble and elude and find the guy. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. Kept the drive alive, and then he hits Jahan Dotson on the shallow cross, and Jahan does the rest. Spin move, all of that good stuff. It's 20-all. We go to overtime. We had chances too. Danny Johnson had a chance to pick off Daniel Jones. We got the football. Curtis Samuel breaks off like a 21-yard run into Giants territory, and somehow we throw a screen and we go backwards like 7 yards after approaching field goal range. So just tons of penalties in that game as well. Logan Thomas had some big penalties that derailed drives. We self-destructed in that game, and it all came down to a Giants field goal at the end. They kicked a long like 54-yard field goal or whatever, and it just came up short. And game ends in a and they had a stupid penalty too. If you remember, their offensive lineman hit one of our guys. It taunted him. I thought it was a soft call, honestly. They called him for taunting after a run, and it hurt him. It pushed him out of field goal range. They were killing us at that time. So we caught a break too. But 2020 tie, you're thinking, all right, we'll get them the next time, because I felt like we dominated that game. And we just made too many mistakes. So, come off the bye at 7-5-1, and everything you want is right in front of you. Just beat the Giants, and you're gonna make the playoffs. Like, there was so much riding on this Sunday night game. It was the biggest game in FedEx Field at FedEx Field since the 2012 non-playoff. I'm talking regular season, since the 2012 season finale against Dallas. It had been that long since we played a game of this magnitude at home. And in particular, in this environment on a Sunday night. That same Week 18 game was a Sunday nighter, or 17 game against Dallas in 2012 was a Sunday nighter. This was a Sunday nighter. Obviously, we had 2 playoff games since then at home, against Tampa in 20 and Green Bay in 15. But this game right here was the biggest game at FedEx in that kind of a stage in ages. And we just, defensively, we came out ready to play, but offensively, we came out flat. And, we literally let Kayvon Thibodeau wreck the game in the first half, including the sack, forced fumble, scoop, and score. He was just dominant. He was wrecking shop. And that play really changed everything, because up until then, the Giants had nothing going offensively. But that touchdown changed everything. And from that point, they kind of dominated the game. but they couldn't score, so they kept settling for field goals, and it kept us in the game. But our problem was we couldn't score either. We kept making mistakes, and we kept not capitalizing. And the perfect, I think, microcosm for that game was us having a big play to Jahan to get us out of the shadow, the shadow of our own goalpost. But then getting down there, Heineke not finding anyone, getting hit and fumbling, and we don't even get a field goal out of that possession. And then you turn around after that and you let the Giants, who are up 5 at the time, 15, I want to say what the score was. It was 17-12 at that time. That field goal would have been huge to cut it to a 2-point game. Instead, we get nothing. And then we'd let them run off like 5-6 minutes of the clock and kick a field goal and to extend it out to 8. Now Heineke has to take us down the field, and he does. Like I said, he always does. And, you get the Terry penalty to negate the touchdown that we would have had, the 1-yard touchdown run to Brian Robinson, which we thought was a bogus call, and I still think it's a bogus call. And then you get a defender jumping on the back of Curtis Samuel like a backpack, and they don't call it. And we lose 20-12. So that your season didn't have to be over there, but that one hurt. Because of how much was riding on that game, and everybody knew the importance of that game on both sides. And, we've talked about Ron not being aggressive enough and really coming out not to lose instead of playing to win like the Giants did. And you knew you weren't beating San Francisco the following week. And so you go in there and you get beat up. But the thing that happened there was Wentz is officially healthy to play. He had been for about a couple of weeks now, but Ron had decided to stick with Heineke. But now that the losses, with a tie and now a loss, and then, the losses were starting to stack, they wanted to get Wentz back in there. And Wentz ends up in mop-up duty against San Francisco, coming in and playing really well. And it sold me on maybe we should give him a shot. Offensive line has been stabilized. The weapons are now confident. But what someone had reminded me was there was no pressure in that situation when Wentz came in. There was no pressure. See, Wentz is all good when there's no pressure, right? But when you put pressure on him, this iteration of Wentz, not the one that we saw in Indy or the one we saw in Philadelphia. When you put pressure on him in terms of game pressure, where he's got to have it, that's when he gets the yips. And there was no game pressure against San Look, man, I'm not expected to come in here and lead us to a victory. Just come out here and just play loose, like you got nothing to lose. And he did. And it sold the staff on he was the better option. Heineke was all banged up, and he was struggling now. The offense was sputtering. So they go to Wentz to start the Browns game. In my mind, he was supposed to have a short leash. Like, you didn't play well early in the season before your injury. And if you don't play well early, this is a bad Browns football team. If you can't give us a spark early, we're going to have to go back to Heineke. And the first possession of the game, he throws a pick. His first attempt of the game is a pick. He throws 2 interceptions. I'm like, in the first half, I'm like, take this man out of the game, please, now. I want him going after the second interception. He throws a 3rd interception, and he still doesn't yank him. We have the ugliest, longest, most disgusting touchdown drive before the half, and that's what gave Ron the green light to keep him in. It was the worst thing that could happen to us, honestly. That culminated in a Carson Wentz, 1-yard quarterback sneak where he stretches the ball over the goal line. It's a 21-play marathon of a drive. We were so awful that day. We take the lead 7-6 at halftime with that quarterback sneak. And really couldn't do anything else the rest of the day. Wentz was awful. He was off. The play calling was horrendous. We had a 4th and 1, and they take Brian Robinson out and insert Jonathan Williams, and they run a toss. And it gets blown up immediately. And these are the kind of things that Scott Turner was doing. Wentz wasn't any better. He's throwing picks all over the place. And then the defense just fell apart after they saw that the offense wasn't going to help them. They fell apart in the second half, and we lose to the Deshaun Watson-led Cleveland Browns. And that felt like the season was over then. And it ultimately was. Later on that day, the Packers would win, and so would Seattle, and that would seal our fate. But we were mathematically eliminated. But and Ron didn't even know, so that didn't help him. So now the season's done. You got nothing to play for at this point. I'm like, it probably doesn't benefit us to beat Dallas in week 18. So it's whatever. But foolish pride. You start playing a game, and you're like, man, let's beat these bastards. And they were playing for the division, a chance at winning the division, pending the outcome of the Giants-Eagles game. And then Sam gets to start, and it wasn't supposed to happen, as we all know, but it did. And now you're rooting for Sam. Now you're rooting for his success. And he plays well, Minus one really bad decision, he played really well. And we dominate these boys. Pick six, shut the run game down, got after Dak, made him uncomfortable, really, truly dominated these boys. And it left you with a sense of, for the first time since 2020, it left you wanting to get back on the ride. Hey, let's get back in line. Let's get back in line, man. This ride is pretty dope. Let's get back in line. The only difference is I don't want to do it with Heineke anymore. I want to do it with Hal. I want to get back on this ride and see what happens. But I want Sam Howell to be driving this time. So everyone's excited for the 2023 season. And the excitement level has reached a crescendo now because Daniel Snyder is no longer the owner officially on July the 21st. The 20th was really Independence Day, but everything became ratified on the 21st of July, 2023. And that'll be the day that, as Washington fans, we gained our independence. We got our team back. And so the reign of terror has officially come to an end, but not before destruction, death, and despair all occurred. Because there are a lot of Redskins fans that have denounced their fandom. They're not coming back. Never. The death of the Redskin name happened. Like, that's not coming back. As much as you can sign as many petitions as you want, that name's not coming back. It's great. We had a run. That shit is not coming back, guys. Sorry to be the one to burst your bubble. Destruction, everything Daniel Snyder touched ended up being destroyed. Robert Griffin III, Kirk Cousins, Trent Williams. I mean, how many careers did we see come to an end and people leave here bitter, right? Leave here with less than fond memories of their stay. I mean, there's no way Trent Williams is going in the Hall of Fame as a Redskin. He should, but he's not. He's not. How many situations bridges did we see burned while he was here? Careers lost while he was here. And then the despair. Many seasons were destroyed. Many fans' hopes of winning were destroyed. And a lot of fandom was destroyed. There was a lot of despair. A lot of destruction. We've made it through the wreckage and through to the other side. And for that, I say, hail to the Commanders. Hail to all the fans out there who somehow weathered the storm. It was tough, man. It was tough. But now, there are greener pastures that lie ahead. And I think it starts this year. I really, truly do. So, I thank you guys for being a part of this series. It's a lot of fun, and it was therapeutic, doing this and reflecting on the 23 seasons that Daniel Snyder was the owner of the Washington Commanders. Um, it's huge, you know, because now we can move forward. We've gone through the past. We've opened up some old wounds, some things that you tried to bury in your subconscious. Nah, bring that shit to the forefront. Let's address it now, because we don't want these old wounds going into the new regime and still bogging you down, still haunting you. When we get into a close game, I don't want you thinking about what the old Daniel Snyder Washington Redskins football team or Commanders would have done. I want you to think about what this new iteration is about to do. Nah, we ain't going to lose this game. We would have before when Dan Snyder was here and that black cloud was hovering over our heads. Not now. So, anyway, we'll talk more. But I'll thank you guys for tuning in to this series, The Reign of Terror, chronicling the 23 years of pure hell Daniel Snyder has put us through. It is officially over. Now let's go win some football games. Until next time, I'm your man Louie T, saying thank you and have a good one. Free.